How y'all doing today? I want to take a chance today to talk to y'all about one of my most important tools in the kitchen. And I know it affects the way a lot of us perform in the kitchen, and that will be our set of knives. You know, there's a lot of questions people ask about, what type of knives do I need in the kitchen? Do I need a big set of knives? Do I need a very expensive knife? Why is there knives on TV for $29.95 that say they'll cut anything? And what's the difference? So I set up a little bitty display today, and I just want to talk a little bit about some of the knives that I have and that I use, and some of the different types and the different features of each knife. Let me get where y'all can see here. Okay, be a little bit better. Alright, first off, let's start off with a paring knife. Now the paring knife is a very important tool. It's one of my go-to tools in the kitchen for sure. And you have the different parts of the knife. You have the spine of the knife here. This is the point, the tip, the belly, and they call this little part right here the bolster. And also you have the heel and the tang. The tang is the piece of metal that goes all the way through the handle and actually is part of the same piece of metal this knife was forged out of. And this is a higher end paring knife. This is actually a shun paring knife, and they make different shapes of paring knife. This particular model is very good for peeling if you want to work it around, because it has a very flat cutting surface here. It has a 16-degree cutting angle. Very nice little knife. Okay, here's another example of a paring knife I have. This is a Gustav paring knife. And it has the pointed tip here, and it's really good for coring stuff. Like I'll take bell peppers and I'll core them because I can stick that little point in there. But you don't have to have two different types of paring knives. I just happen to have these two, but you definitely need a paring knife in your set of knives. Okay, next, this is not, I wouldn't consider this as a must-have go-to. This is what they kind of call a utility knife. You could use this for you could use it as kind of a boning knife. You could use it for cutting. This is one of those knives that you get in a set, and this is why I'll talk about a little later. I'm kind of against sets that you don't really have to have. It's kind of a multi-purpose knife, okay? This knife here, they call a Santoku knife, and it's kind of it's a really good knife for chopping vegetables, doing prep work. This particular model, it features the scalloped edge. If you can see there's little indentions. They kind of help the vegetables not to stick to the side of the knife. I don't know if you ever had that problem where you're chopping your onions or bell peppers and you have everything pile up on the knife. That kind of gets that to fall off there. But this is another shun. It's a very nice knife, forged knife, very nice pocket wood handle, VG10 steel. Okay, here's another knife, the same type of knife, the Santoku, but this is a, I believe they call this a Kyocera. It's a ceramic knife. My wife actually picked this knife up, and I use this knife quite a bit. The thing I like about ceramic is very hard, so it's pretty sharp. It will not rust no matter what, because you're not dealing with the metal, but you don't have to dry it. Like I can wash off. You could put it out dry it, but you could put it in the drawer wet if you wanted to. It wouldn't hurt anything. With the downfalls, they say these knives can break. Of course, anything very hard can be brittle. But I've seen tests on the internet and stuff where people drop them on the floor and all kind of stuff like that. I'm not going to do that here, but they don't break. So I think they're pretty durable. And you can get this knife for around $50. So it's a good little knife to have. It's definitely one of my go-tos. So I'm going to put this up here in the go-to category. Okay, then of course this is usually the star of any knife collection. It's your chef's knife. This is an 8-inch chef's knife. This is also by Shun. It's a very nice model, has great weight to it. I mean, it's just very feels great in the hand. The packwood handle, it's got the 16-degree cutting edge, also the VG10 steel. This is a very good knife. Now this is a little bit more on the high dollar side. You're looking to spend around $200 on a knife like this. But you could also, and this is definitely a go-to knife, this particular knife. You could go to something cheaper. This is, but it's still a good knife. This is a Gustav. like I said, these aren't the high-end Gustavs. These are some of the ones you get up from the mall. They'll come in a little kit. You know, I think a kit was about $100 for a 5-piece set. But still, the knife of the same dimensions, the 8-inch chef's knife, and it works great for what it is. Okay, on to some more specialty knives, and these aren't necessarily knives that you would have to have, but they're nice to have around. I wouldn't go spend a bunch of money on these specialty knives though, because they only serve one or two purposes. This right here is what you call a slicer. I don't know if you've ever been to a buffet or somewhere where you see a guy cutting the roast beef at the end of the buffet, or carving turkey. It's a wonderful knife. You just take it on a big roast or a turkey, and you just make one slide down, and it'll just take those paper thin little slices off there. It's a really good knife to have. Like I say, I got this knife. It's a Cisco knife, actually. It has the Sandy Safe handle. Got this in a kit as a gift once from a friend, but it's a good knife to have. Okay, this is a bread knife. You'll notice the bread knife is serrated, so it cuts through bread very easily without smushing the bread. It also has, as the heel is way down here, so it has this curve to it. It's good to where you hold and you get that good angle on the bread and just make those passes just like that and just saw through that bread. Here's another specialty knife. Like I said, you don't have to have something. You may not deal with fish, but this is a fillet knife. This particular model is just something I had here in the drawer. My fillet knife, my go-to fillet knife is actually a Dexter Russell, and I really like it because he uses good steel, and it also has, like on the Cisco knives, a Sandy Safe handle. And if you know anything about filleting fish, you're dealing with a bunch of contaminants and stuff like that, and you really don't want to have a wooden handle, so to speak. This is more of kind of a collector's type little piece. But also, you know, the aspects of a fillet knife, you're looking at a thin blade, and it has to have a little bit of flex to it. You want a little bit of flex so you can get down there and actually bend the knife just a little bit and get between the meat and the bone on the fish. Okay. Another thing, when you're dealing with knives, you also want to talk about, this is not a knife sharpener. This is what you call a honing tool. You need to use this. I like to use it about every time I take my knives out and use them. And what it does, it realigns the molecules on the edge of the knife to straighten them back up to keep that sharp edge. It will not resharpen a dull edge, but what it will do is prolong a sharp edge. And how you use this particular hunting steel is you take your knife, you get it at a 45-degree angle down one side of the steel, and I like to make 5 passes. And on one side, and I'll go around to the other side, and I'll make 5 passes over here. But if you'll do that every time you take your knife out or you finish cutting with your knife, I think your knives will stay sharper a lot longer, and they'll tend to last a lot longer for you. Also, I have a cutting board here. This particular cutting board is it's kind of a plastic or the polyurethane cutting board. It's very good sanitary cutting board. You can stick in the dishwasher. It's good. It's not hard on the blades and edges of your knife. These are good to use. Also, if you have a hardwood cutting board, I don't have one, but they're good to use. They're a little more expensive, and you can also cut a little faster on there. But the advantage of this cutting board is a lot more sanitary, I believe. What you don't want to use, you don't want to cut on your countertop, you don't want to cut on granite, marble, slate, anything like that will just ruin the edges of your knife. So another thing I wanted to bring up here with all these knives is, as I talked about, the kits of knives. You don't necessarily have to have all these knives. You don't have to have 10 knives, 12 knives, knives and shears. I think just a few knives you really need to starting out with. That you must, you really have to have in any kitchen. And what I would suggest starting out with, especially, the main two are, of course, your chef's knife. You're going to need a chef's knife, and you're going to need a paring knife. These two knives, I would say, are a must-have in any kitchen. Another great knife that will complement these two very well is the Santuco. But then again, this can be interchangeable with chef's knife. The main two are the paring knife and the chef's knife. And if you want to put a third in there, I would say the Santuco. You don't have to get the higher end knives. Like I said, what makes these shuns so expensive and higher end, they are made of some very fine steels, layered steel that use a VG10 steel, which you know, it can be sharpened to a very, very sharp point and it will hold its point. It's also, it's forged. It's not a stamp knife, which means if you can see these tiny little lines in this knife, it's 32 layers of steel that are pounded together to make this knife. It's a nice, really nice knife. It works great. It can be a lifetime investment if you want to invest the money in it. But it's not a must-have for your kitchen. Okay? You can get a stamped knife like this. And this one's made by Gustav, which they also make higher end knives. They make forged knives. They make really nice knives. And this is not a bad knife. But then again, you don't see the tang that comes all the way through the bolster. There's the tang, the tang that comes all the way through the handle. The tang comes about right there. This knife is what you call a stamp knife. They take a big sheet of metal, they stamp it out. They call it, but it's still a decent knife. And also, like I said, you have the ceramics, which I'm just now experimenting with some of the ceramic knives, and they may be a way to go too. I'll have to do some more research on those. One thing also that I would like to say, I don't think you need in a knife set. I see a lot of knife sets that want to come with steak knives. Now, any steak that I cook, I'm not going to need anything more than just Old Faithful here, just a standard steak knife to cut. You do not need, you know, a $200 set of 5 steak knives or even more to cut your steak. If you do, you're cooking your steak wrong. I totally disagree in high-end steak knives. This is an old, you know, the old Outback Walmart special. This is a great little old knife. So I hope that I've answered some of your questions about knives, and maybe if you have some more questions, just go ahead and write in the comment post, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my knowledge. So thanks a lot. Okay, I just had 1 or 2 more points I wanted to put here in this video about knives. One thing I want to talk about is maintaining your knives. I know I talked about using the sharpening steel, and that is important, but you also want to make sure that you're, you know, drying your knives off after use. You don't want to just use a knife, leave it in the sink wet, because it will rust or pit, no matter if it's a really expensive knife like this or just some cheap knife. I'll give you an example. This is a fairly nice knife. This Cisco knife was left in the sink, and if you'll see, it has little rust pits and stuff like that. And this is a good, you know, kitchen grade, commercial grade knife, but it did rust because it just wasn't taken care of properly. Do not believe in putting your knives in the dishwasher. I know it's a lot easier, but your knives will last a whole lot longer if you'll just hand wash your knives. So do that, and also you want to keep your honing your knives with your honing steel, and you've got to store your knives right. You don't want to store your knives just in a drawer laying around, you know, where they're bumping into all other kind of stuff. For one, it's dangerous. You don't want to do that. You want somebody reaching in and getting cut. I like to keep my higher end knives in, or actually knives that I use every day, in this little fold up case here. You could use a knife block too, but this little case, for instance, you put this knife in just like this. It just slips right into the little slot. Okay, once it slips in, this folds over. You roll this whole thing up, it velcros, and you can just take it and stow it away in the cabinet. Or you can take it, you know, somewhere if you had to go someone else's house to do some cooking. Another reason I like to use that little device is because I hate when I come home and, you know, could be my wife, could be a relative, or somebody's over at the house. They don't realize about these knives, and they've got your $200 chef's knife in there, opening a Christmas present, you know, or cutting open a pack of batteries. I mean, that's just ruins the knife. So, you know, storage, you know, wash your knives right, dry your knives right. And as far as sharpening goes, the best way, really the only way to me, is professionally sharpened. You can usually call your knife manufacturer and you can mail those into them. I try to do that about once a year. Or if you have a professional knife sharpener around, I know at Bass Pro Shop, if you have one of those in your area, they do knife sharpening. So that's always a good way to go. But those are a few more points I wanted to touch before I end this video. So thanks a lot again for watching.